Kathleen Kennedy is finally gone from Lucasfilm.
And there was much rejoicing.
Now, I know many of you probably expect me to say that she was horrible and led Star Wars into a dark period of decline and mediocrity, or predict that her ultimate legacy will be one of failure, division, and destruction. Maybe you think I will accuse her of using Emperor Palpatine as a role model, worming her way into the good graces of people like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, biding her time until she was able to seize absolute power, and then imposing her corrupt vision on the galaxy, destroying everything they built and valued in the process.
Execute Order 66.
And you'd be right. I just said all that. But is the situation really that simple? Was Kathleen Kennedy truly the biggest reason for the decline of Star Wars? Will her resignation signal a return to what made Star Wars so great in the first place? And what is most likely to come out of Lucasfilm in the future? To answer that, let's break down exactly what the biggest mistakes were, and whether Kathleen Kennedy's departure will solve them. Let's start by acknowledging that Kennedy has producer and other credits on a long list of classic movies with Spielberg, Lucas, and more. She worked in the business for a very long time and was incredibly successful and well respected. That's why she was given control of Star Wars in the first place. And if she had stepped away from it along with Lucas, she'd probably be remembered to this day as one of the great producers, maybe the greatest female producer ever. Unfortunately, she didn't. She was given full control of a major franchise, and when she was the one at the top, she failed, financially, creatively, critically. Force Awakens did well off hype alone, but the next two cut that number in half, and Solo flopped. So Star Wars pivoted to streaming TV shows instead, but after The Mandalorian's solid start, the ratings and interest have plummeted, even for truly great shows like Andor. But put aside any numbers or good reviews or silver linings, the mission of the sequels, the reason Disney bought Star Wars, was to inspire a new generation of fandom and create a whole new era of heroes and villains to explore. Obviously, that hasn't happened. Instead, they divided the existing fan base and didn't build much of a new one. That's why every show since then has been before the sequels. There just wasn't much clamor for more of what the sequels were offering, and Disney knew it. We're just now getting new movies from the sequel era after they've exhausted everything else and the streaming era has run its course. Will it work? I have my doubts. But don't be surprised if Filoni and the new CEO of Disney decide to delay or cancel most of what we've heard about, if it's not too late. But regardless of whether we get another Rey movie, or even that Kylo Ren spinoff, unless there's some shocking turnaround, it will almost certainly be the final nail in the coffin before they bury what's left of Kathleen Kennedy's legacy. That doesn't answer the question of whether it was her fault, which is a lot more important than simply assigning blame. The big mistakes were mostly because of Kathleen Kennedy. We can expect things to improve significantly when she leaves. But if it wasn't primarily her fault, mistakes are likely to continue or get worse. It's also a different question from whether she owns the failures of the Disney era. She absolutely does, regardless of whether it's her fault. That's leadership. CEO of a company is likely to get fired when the company declines, even if it wasn't some specific decision of his that caused the downfall. Just like a president might lose an election based on economics that were totally beyond his control. So, is Kathleen Kennedy at fault? I want to say yes. I really do. She has made some truly terrible decisions, which we'll get to in a minute. I also see those more as symptoms of the problem. The real disease slowly eating away at the Star Wars universe lies with Disney, or perhaps the whole entertainment industry. And it's going to take a lot more to heal than peeling off Kathleen Kennedy like a crusty old scab. But since she's the one leaving, let's start with where we can blame her and where things might improve now that she's gone. As the head of Lucasfilm, she approved every project, good and bad, during her tenure. She greenlit Andor with a huge budget and took a chance on The Mandalorian to kickstart streaming. She also evidently thought Solo and The Acolyte were great ideas. We'll probably never know exactly how much she inserted herself into creative decisions. Did she personally create Rey or require a female protagonist? Did she suggest Luke become an angry old hermit or personally demand the Vespa gang? Probably not. That's beside the point, because executives don't have to make every day-to-day decision to drastically affect the company. As a president, she hired all the people who do make those decisions and approved of their work. She had veto power and could have killed any of those bad ideas. Her role is to put the right people in the right place and get them all working toward the same goal. The best executives set the broader vision, bring in the right people, let them work, and then hold them accountable to the results. Can anyone honestly say that's what happened during the sequel trilogy? Was there a coherent vision that everyone adhered to? Did she bring in the right people for the job? Did she put those people in the best possible position and let them work free from any corporate or ideological pressure? Was anyone at any point ever held accountable for their failures? No, managerially, the sequels were a mess, even if you happened to like the individual movies. They couldn't stick to a plan, if they ever had one, brought in different creators with different visions, and seemed to be more concerned with creating new characters and merchandising than telling a great story. The same thing happened with the pivot to streaming. They put out all sorts of different shows with varying quality and purpose, which simply diluted the brand and exhausted the fan base. Even when Dave Filoni came in as creative director to try to create some consistency, did you notice much of anything change? Was having Lawrence Kasdan, writer of Empire Strikes Back, enough to save The Force Awakens or Solo? No, because Kathleen Kennedy was still setting the tone. Does that mean the tone will change now that Dave Filoni is alone at the top? Yes, it absolutely will. Everyone is begging for a new direction, and Filoni will be keen to put his mark on the story. So get ready for a lot more Ahsoka-related content, I guess. But will it turn everything around and bring back the glory days of pre-Disney Star Wars? Well, that's where things get complicated. You see, everything I said about Kathleen Kennedy's leadership applies equally to Disney. She didn't work in a vacuum any more than JJ or Dave. She had bosses who hired her and whom she had to please. Lucasfilm is a part of Disney, and Disney has a very distinct culture. I've heard it called princess culture, and while that hasn't always been true, it certainly has been for most of the 21st century. Older Disney movies like The Lion King, Aladdin, and Little Mermaid were more balanced in their representation of the male and female roles. More recent marquee stories have emphasized the female, often putting the male characters in the role of villain or sidekick. Not all, of course, but there's a definite tilt. Think Frozen, Moana, Tangled, Encanto, Brave, Zootopia, and more. And that's not to say any of those are bad by any means. It's a mixed bag, honestly. The question is whether the same culture that pushed those movies in a particular direction also had an impact on Star Wars. And of course it has. Every person working on the Star Wars movies and shows is an employee at Disney, surrounded by Disney employees working in Disney offices, and they're all telling each other the same things. They all have the same ideas and are working toward the same goal. That's what a company culture is. That's how we get characters like Rey and Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, Sabine, and the Acolyte Witches, where everyone either thinks they are perfect or are too afraid to say otherwise. Anyone who doesn't get with the program is either fired or realizes they don't belong and leaves on their own. But while Disney's original brand could accommodate more princesses for a predominantly female audience, it never made sense for the male-dominated audience of Star Wars. They were stuck trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, assuming what worked for the rest of Disney would also work for Star Wars. They never figured out how to appeal to Star Wars core fans or tell the kind of stories they wanted. They never even tried. The thought never crossed their minds because everyone at Disney agreed with each other, and anyone who didn't agree was obviously a toxic fan who wasn't part of Disney's audience in the first place. Did Kathleen Kennedy buy into that culture? Yes, wholeheartedly. Did she create it? No. So it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Company cultures, whether good or bad, are very hard to change because they're so deeply embedded in the personnel and systems used by the organization. It takes a strong leader who is either willing to fire a large number of employees or can cast a compelling vision and then inspire or force obedience to it. Do you think Dave Filoni, who's already inside of Disney, is that guy? Is the next CEO of Disney likely to be someone who completely changes the company culture or rebuilds Lucasfilm as a strictly separate entity? I doubt it. Even Feige was one of the best and most respected executives in the business, and even he couldn't escape this trend in Marvel Phase 4, and that's before you even talk about the problems of the entertainment industry as a whole. The streaming revolution, writing rooms, corporate risk aversion, and all the rest that have seemingly degenerated TV shows and movies across the board. In the end, we're likely to get some small improvements in the margins. A change of focus, maybe a return to a previous era, or a jump ahead to start a new one. Maybe that will give us a few good movies and shows, and maybe that will be enough to satisfy us for a while. At this point, we're starving for anything decent. At least it can't be worse than Kathleen Kennedy, right? Right?
Power of one, the power of two, the power of many.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are you excited for Dave Filoni, or are you a little skeptical of where he might go? And check out these video essays in the meantime. you later.